The international drug trade. Well, what is it? The illegal drug trade hits all countries around the world. Approximately 230 million people in 2010 admitted to using drugs at least once in their lifetime, which is about 5% of the entire world population. 200,000 people die per day because of drug use. Because of the vast use of drugs throughout the world, this trade can be very lucrative. However, because of all the money being made, it is also a very dangerous trade to be part of, and it can also affect many others that do not wish to be a part of the trade. Drugs will always be in demand throughout the world. There will never be a way to curb that demand. However, the supply can be cut off in certain locations. The most money is made with the middleman. This is called the price wedge, where the price of creating these drugs is very low compared to the price of sale on the street. There are major differences between producing and consuming countries in the illicit drug trade. Producing countries are predominantly poor countries whose citizens need to produce these drugs to support families and put food on their plates. Without this trade, many poor citizens would be without jobs and would not have any income. Drug-demanding countries, on the other hand, are prosperous and drive the international drug trade. This worldwide epidemic not only affects just the users, but also innocent citizens as well. The money, corruption, and danger from the drug trade also translates into other criminal activities as well, such as prostitution, burglary, murder, and other gang-affiliated activities. This money can corrupt politicians, police, judges, and anyone with governmental power. This means the poor countries that are producing these drugs do not actually have as much power as they would like. Drug affiliations control the outsourcing and importing of money and drugs to support the global demand. Drug cartels are happily meeting the demands of U.S. drug users. They're either the traffickers for drugs such as cocaine and heroin from different countries, or they produce it in the country, such as methamphetamines and marijuana. The demand is so high that the danger of transporting the drugs across the border pays off for the cartels. In turn, these cartels receive money and guns from the United States. This creates violence and results in a loss of stability in the country. Citizens now understand how corrupt their government is and cannot trust the police or federales out of fear that they are corrupt as well. Since Mexico is on the southern border of the United States, it is the perfect hub for the Latin America drug trade. Over the past few years, since the 1990s, drug cartels have been fighting against each other, as well as the federal government, for control over regional trafficking routes to provide drugs to the U.S. border. However, this violence is not solely between the cartel members, but this also spills onto the streets of Mexico, killing many innocent citizens. In 2006, President Calderón at the time launched a crackdown promising to switch the focus from taking down gangs to reducing violence that affected Mexican citizens. However, this method only increased casualties. Between 2006 and 2011, it is said that over 47,000 people were killed due to organized crime-related violence in Mexico. This violence and large amount of criminal money not only drives violence on the streets up, but it also takes away from the general well-being of Mexican citizens. Citizens in many cities are frightened to walk the streets where cartels rule instead of the government. There is no longer security, but always a fear for life. These cartels have grown so large and have such a vast monetary backing that the Mexican government is not having much success with the takedown of each cartel affiliation. If one goes down, more violence ensues for the rights to previous cartels' distribution. If the Mexican government sends out their military, backlash becomes even stronger. There is no right way to win. Money coming from drugs is not only corrupting Mexico, but is happening all around the world. For example, opium and heroin production has potentially provided funds for Al-Qaeda and other terrorist organizations. These groups are not only killing, but are stopping women from being educated, as well as stopping westernization around their countries. This force and aggression towards their own people prevents them from free speech and prevents the citizens from saying how they truly feel. This is truly a global issue because it indirectly or directly affects every single person worldwide. While illicit drug use has been known to predominantly affect Western civilization, effects are slowly rising in the rest of the world. The use of illegal drugs not only costs society money, but also tends to devalue one's life. Use of drugs is closely linked to crimes, most of the time to supply the habit. Bigger health costs, creates violence, and also lowers society's productivity. Demand for illegal drugs will always be present throughout the world. However, if the supply chain can be cut off, that will end the supply for the demand. Countries need to come together to create a policy that will stop supply. If only one country does this, supply will move on to the next country and keep producing. A possible solution is proposed by the UNODC, which is the United Nations Task Force for Illegal Drugs. This group wants to view drug abuse as a disease and make sure that users receive proper treatment to prevent overdoses, disease transmittances, and relapse. Studies have shown that if drug abuse is viewed this way, instead of turning a blind eye to those who need help, demand will slowly go down, meaning less necessity for supply. This change in view could hopefully curb violence in drug-producing countries, in which its citizens would prosper and better their lives without fear. In order for this proposition to help the innocent citizens that are so greatly affected, each country needs to buy into a plan that would fairly eradicate drug production from each location without moving to a new one. If this plan is handled correctly and all nations buy into it, global demand and supply for drugs would go down, hopefully slowly eradicating violence and creating a better and more prosperous society around the world.